Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. We're so happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Krista Nielsen. Krista's a firefighter and a social worker. She's traveled with us to Africa before to do some training. Really excited to have her join us today for our training on suicide prevention. It's a really important topic that doesn't get discussed enough. So stick around. This is going to be a great training. Before we get started with that training, I'm going to pass things over to Errol Sianga, who is Africa Fire Mission's fire safety advocate, for a few words of encouragement.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Christine, and everyone else for joining us. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. So today's words of encouragement is just to let everyone know that you are all important in all your activity. And again, remember, if you're not okay, just remember to talk to someone, go out there, engage in an extracurricular activity that is very productive, that can make you cool your mind, that can make you cool your situation you're in. Always, number two, and the final one, always check on your environment. Make sure your environment is conducive for you psychologically and also mentally, so that you don't get affected by things around you. At your workplace, make sure you do lots of debrief, do a lot of discussion, and also a lot of positive thinking and positive messages. So thank you all for the word of encouragement, and practice it in your workstation, practice it in your fire station. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mike.
Excellent. Thank you, Errol. We appreciate the work that you're doing for us to help advocate and make things better for African firefighters. Really appreciate it. Before we get started with today's training, let me just touch on a couple of administrative notes. You stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes. We'll get you a certificate of attendance for today's training. If you lose your bundles, your internet cuts out, you've got some sort of an issue, you can't stick around. Maybe you go on a fire call and you miss that, but you want to get this content, we have answers. We have solutions for you. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll post something in there that links to our Google Drive, where you'll be able to find a recording of today's training, a couple of questions to see if you watch that training, answer those questions, tell us what you learned about the training. We can get you a certificate of participation for that training as well. This one, all the other trainings we've done so far this year. You can also find that on our webpage, africafiremission.org. Go to the resources tab under training materials. You'll be able to find a link there. That website, the resources tab on our website, is for you guys in Africa, African firefighters. Lots of free resources. I encourage you to go there, check it out. Hit up all of our social medias. We've got the Facebook, the TikTok, the Instagram. I'm not a social media guy, but hey, we would find those things. Africa Fire Mission, at Africa Fire Mission. Subscribe to that stuff. The more subscribers we get, the more we can do with that. Check out our YouTube channel. Search for Africa Fire Mission. The more you guys like and subscribe to those social media and things like that, the more that just helps us build what we're doing and can help us assist you guys even more. So check out our socials and that kind of stuff, if you would, please. I think that, one more thing. At the top of the hour, when we wrap up our training, we're going to transition into tea time. We'll pass things back over to the Africa Fire Mission team of Jose and Errol. They'll host that tea time. It's a great time where you could discuss more about what you learned today, ask other questions about today's class, or just do some networking with firefighters from throughout Africa. Take a look at the chat. We've got guys from all over. So please take advantage of that networking opportunity when we wrap up at the top of the hour. Now, sort of without further ado, I don't want to chew up any more of her time. I'm going to pass things over to Krista to get us started with today's training.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited to be here again. It's been a while. And I'm so excited to be here and talk about the topic of suicide prevention. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. And for those of you who did not have an opportunity to attend last week's Sorry, little technical issues here. For those of you who did not have an opportunity to attend last week's presentation on firefighter mental health, I absolutely encourage you to do that. It definitely ties into today's presentation. So I hope that if you did not have a chance to do that, that you would go back and review that, because firefighter mental health, firefighter suicide prevention is not something that we talk about as often as we should. I'm so glad to see that this is something that is being talked about more often. But I encourage you after today to spend time talking a little bit to people around you who maybe didn't attend today's presentation about what you learned. Use some of the words that we talked about today. I know there's still a lot of stigma. There's a lot of stigma here in the United States that exists. I know there's likely a lot of stigma where you all live. And so I'm just really glad to have you all here. And I hope that you can take some information away with you today and share it with the people around you, both in the fire service and outside the fire service that you care about. So I am going to just get started and talk a little bit about myself, so that you know who the heck I am and why, what makes me someone that can has the background to talk about this. So I live in Minnesota, which is a very cold part of the United States. It's actually supposed to snow quite a bit today, so yeah, that'll be fun. But I have spent 25 plus years working in the behavior or mental health field. I currently work in the largest county in Minnesota, and I support several areas where we help support the kind of most vulnerable, most people with real significant mental health issues in our large county in Minnesota. So I've been doing that for over 25 years. In addition, I was employed for 5 years as a paid on-call firefighter. I also was able to participate in AFM's Fire Symposium in Kenya in November 2021. It was an amazing experience and something I talk about all the time. You can see over here, this is my family, my husband and my 2 children a couple of years ago. So that's just a little bit of my background and what kind of gives me some experience to share the my knowledge around mental health, suicide prevention, and also why this is a unique topic for people who work in the fire service. So just for fun, I threw in a few pictures of me. This is my good friend Alicia, who actually traveled with me in 2021 to Nairobi to attend the symposium. This is us sitting on the front of our truck a couple years ago. This is me doing a training. And we were doing some extrication drills. This is another, we were doing some fire prevention, actually. You can see to the right there is a burn trailer, and so we were doing some fire prevention and talking a little bit about kind of the close your door that campaign that was going on at the time. So you can see me, I'm the one holding the fire hose. And then here is a picture of me when I was actually at one of the fire stations in Nairobi. So again, just a little bit of a background. So you might be wondering, why in the world are we talking about suicide when we're here talking to a bunch of firefighters? What is the connection between suicide and the fire service? And so you all probably know how important it is to be physically prepared to fight fires. If you are not physically prepared, if you don't do the training, if you are not physically ready to go in and manage the physical aspect of firefighting, it's going to take a toll on your body. You're not going to be able to continue to do the job. Similar to that, if you are not caring for your mental health, um, this is a job that can take a toll on you. We are there to see some people on their worst days kind of every day. And as a result, if you're not taking care of your mental health, just like if you're not taking care of your physical health, it can take a really big toll on you. And so, one of the things that can happen to some people, and not everyone, but one of the things that can happen is if you are accumulating a lot of trauma, accumulating a lot of um, untreated mental health symptoms, you can get to a point where you start considering what might happen if you were to take your own life. That's sort of like the equivalent is if you continued to fight fires and go to fires and you were not taking care of your physical health. Eventually, your body would just not be able to tolerate the physical demands of the work. If you um, are doing a very mentally challenging job and you're not taking of your mental health, eventually your mind might just get to a point where it just says we can't go on, we can't continue to do this. So just like taking care of your physical health is so important, taking care of your mental health is just important, because if you don't, you could potentially get to the point where there is absolutely a risk to your health and safety, just like there is if you don't take care of your physical health. As I mentioned previously, um, in the role of firefighter, you're there on everyone's worst day, and that is what you do on a daily basis. You are exposed to frequent trauma. You're also on a daily basis, or on days when you're going into work, you're putting your own self at risk. And the 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 suicide risk for people who are in this field is much higher for than it is for the general population, because of some of these risk factors, because of the trauma that you experience, because of the potential risk that you face on a daily basis. And that is why it's important that we talk about it, that we have conversations about it, that we address it, rather than pretending like it's something that just doesn't exist. Just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact people. And so I'm hoping, again, that today, by us talking about it, we can kind of take some of the power away from it and hopefully allow you to be there maybe for some of your colleagues or some of your friends or family, or even for yourself if you start to struggle. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of we'll just kind of go through the basics right now here, and then we'll go into a little bit um, around like what can you do if you start to notice somebody around you having maybe taking some actions that make you concerned. What can you do? So, what is suicide? A suicide itself, that is the act of intentionally ending your life. So there's a lot of different means that people do that. It does vary by culture, and it varies by gender. So men tend to do like more lethal means of suicide. Women don't necessarily, but again, that you can't predict how people are going to um, take action. But suicide, when we talk about actual suicide, that is the actual act of ending a person's life. There's also something called suicidal ideation. And that means that people are sort of constantly thinking about suicide. So it's kind of on their mind. They're thinking about like what it might look like, what might I do. They're sort of constantly weighing the idea of whether or not they might actually take action and follow through with completing suicide. If people are having suicidal ideation, that can be a sign that they are getting closer to completing the act of suicide. And so those are one of the important things to think about is what has changed with the suicidal ideation. So maybe, for example, the individual always talks about like, well, yeah, I think about suicide, but I don't actually know what I would do. Maybe you're having a conversation with them and now they're saying, yeah, I think about suicide all the time. And now I'm thinking I might drink some poison that I saw at the at the fire station. That that would show that there has been a change with their suicidal ideation, and you might want to have some more conversations with them. And we'll talk a little bit later on about what are some things you could do. Suicidal behavior. So this is a spectrum. There's a whole bunch of different things that people might engage in. So sometimes this looks like people getting really close to committing suicide. So maybe people might drive really fast or really dangerously to the point where they may hurt themselves. And then they might just back off. So it's sort of like testing the waters a little bit, like how close are they? How close can they get to actually going through with the action? And again, these are some warning signs that somebody might be getting close to actually following through with the act of taking their own life. So again, some more facts about suicide. This is a major global public health concern. If you look at globally, 800,000 to 1 million deaths, and that is probably a low estimate because there is so much stigma around it. So the actual number is probably a lot higher. It is the 15th leading cause of death worldwide. However, for young people, 15 to 19-year-olds, it's actually the fourth leading cause of death. So I think a lot of times we think about, accidents or illnesses and things like that, but it can be pretty shocking to think that worldwide, this is the fourth most common way that young people, 15 to 19-year-olds, actually die is by taking their own life. It's pretty shocking. I just looked at some facts. I looked at Kenya just because I've been there and figured a lot of you all would be impacted by this. In Kenya, between 2015 and 2018, 1,442, I see I spelled it wrong there, persons were reported to have committed the crime, we'll talk about that in a second, of attempted suicide. The youngest was 9, which is always shocking and sad to me, while the youngest was 76. Again, probably a pretty low estimate, and really kind of only gives you a little bit of a picture of how big of a problem this is, because many people are likely not reporting suicide when they're having attempted suicides, or even when suicides actually happen, again, because of the stigma that exists. Again, suicide is a criminal offense in many countries. In the United States, it is not considered a crime, but in 25 of the 192 countries around the world, it is still considered a criminal offense, sadly. It is really important that we continue to work to decriminalize suicide. It's important that we work to get it recognized as a public health issue, and that we're compassionate towards people who struggle with thoughts of suicide, who struggle with suicidal behaviors. If we think about what is going to decrease the amount of suicides that actually happen, or the number of people who actually have suicidal thoughts, to criminalize people, to put them in prison is not going to be the answer to decreasing them, and in fact is likely going to contribute to people following through with it. And so the hope in today, again, is to get people talking about it more and help people develop more of that compassion and treatment of people in a different way so that we can see better outcomes for people who struggle with this. So when you think about what puts some people more at risk for suicide, these are some of the factors that that you tend to put someone more in the risk category for actually following through with it. So being male, you're 4 times as likely to be successful with dying by suicide. I love to see more women in the fire service. It brings me great, great joy. That being said, many of your peers are likely male, and so if you look around you at all of your the peers, you are likely looking at a lot of males, and so as a result, it's important for you all to know that you are 4 times as likely to be successful in following through with dying. And that is because, as I mentioned at the beginning, that men are more likely to use lethal means when they attempt suicide. Being younger male, so kind of being in that late teens, early 20 categories definitely puts people at a higher risk. If there is a history of mental illness, so like depression or anything like that, that is puts you at a higher risk as well. There's some interpersonal challenges. So if like somebody is going through some difficulties with their marriage or some other challenges with close relationships, that's going to put you at a higher risk as well. Other stressful life events. When we talk about chronic comorbidities, that might mean a long-term illness that increases the stress that you have. So makes it more difficult to deal with other stresses in your life. So it's important to think about these when you think about, hey, I have a guy that I know, and he's talking a little bit about maybe not wanting to be around for very much longer. If you're seeing some of these things, like, hey, he's a 23-year-old guy. He, just broke up with his girlfriend or his wife, and she took their child and left. Like those are definitely some signs that this might be somebody that I might want to keep an eye on a little bit closer and make sure that they're okay. Some other risk factors, poverty. So that is something that also leads to higher suicide risk. When I say lack of access to empowerment opportunities, so that's kind of, if we look at the people who maybe don't feel like they have a lot of resources to advocate for themselves, those are going to be individuals as well who maybe feel more hopeless and feel like they don't have a lot of resources to support themselves if they're struggling, and don't feel like there's a lot to live for anymore. And then people who also face increased discrimination. So if you think about people who, in addition to maybe are the younger males, have interpersonal problems, but maybe they also have a disability. So maybe they're facing some increased discrimination that is going to also increase their risk. So let's say you're starting to think about people in your life that might be in that higher risk category. Maybe you're starting to think about people um, who maybe have said a couple of things that are starting to click in your brain now, and you're like, gosh, maybe I need to be a little bit worried about them, or maybe I need to check in with them. You might be wondering, what are some things that I can do? So going to talk a little bit about that now. What are some steps that you can take to support your friends, your family, your brothers and sisters in the fire brigade? Number one, got to take care of yourself. Right? So can't help others if you are not well. So that's why it's important to go back to what Brian talked about last week in firefighter mental health, doing things to spend time with your family, with your friends, with your church, with your community. Make sure that you're doing activities that you enjoy doing. Making sure that you are taking care of your own mental health so that you are able to support the people that are around you. So that is step number one, is taking care of your own mental health. So step two, here are some warning signs to look for. So again, let's say you are thinking now, you know that you're aware of some of those risk factors, being younger, being male, some changes with the interpersonal stuff. Again, the wife or girlfriend left, lots of things going on. So you already kind of know like what might make someone more at risk. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what are some warning signs to look for. So what do you want to pay attention to in a person's behavior that might give you a sign that, hey, this person could be getting closer to actually taking their own life. So substance use, that's a big one. People who abuse alcohol, drugs are at much greater risk um, of actually being successful in committing suicide. If people are starting to feel hopeless, like there's no point, you're having difficulties, help getting them to see any reason to carry on. If there's a change in their behavior, if they're withdrawing, if you're starting to see like the mood swings, like they come in and they're real happy, and then they come in the next day or even at night and their mood's real low. All of these things are warning signs to look for. And some people, some people maybe they are not really much of a social person. Maybe they tend to be by themselves. So for them, a social withdrawal wouldn't be a big change. What you're really looking for are changes in a person's behavior. So you start to see something different about somebody, that's going to be a warning sign. You're going to start to say, hey, this is something different. Um, I'm this is a change in that person's behavior, and they've got the warning signs, or they've got the risk factors. I might want to do some checking in with this person. Another thing to keep in mind is that even if they don't have those risk factors, so we talk about it being young men, um, women, ladies, please keep an eye on your friends, or not that you can't have male friends, but your lady friends and your female family members, because there's definitely a risk there. So I don't want to just focus on the males here, because everybody is at risk for having some thoughts and struggles with suicide behaviors. Giving away possessions is also a pretty big cue that somebody might be going through, that they might be getting really close to following through with um, committing suicide. That's kind of the point where people are really they're saying, hey, I'm not going to be around very much longer. I'm not going to need this. I'm going to start actually figuring out who might benefit from some of these items that I'm not going to need anymore. So once you have identified that, hey, this person, I'm starting to see some changes in their behavior, I'm concerned about them, the next step is for you to work on building rapport with them. So sorry about that. And making sure that you are a safe place for them to talk. So this is where it's important that we're having these conversations about and bringing up the topic of suicide beforehand, right? So we don't want this to be something that is never talked about, and then all of a sudden you're coming up to somebody for the first time and they're like, oh, why are we talking about this now? If we can make the whole topic of mental health and suicide not so stigmatized, makes it a little bit easier to broach the subject for you, and it also makes it a little easier for that topic to come up and for other people to talk with you about it as well. So making sure that that person feels like you are a trusted confidant to talk to. Make sure you're in a private place as much as possible. People don't usually want to share really private things about themselves when there's a bunch of people around. Make sure that you're fully present. So while you're having the conversation with them, try not to like be on your phone and checking text messages or Facebook or whatever it is. Make sure that you're with them, that you're making eye contact, that they know that you are there, and you're there to hear them, and you're there to be present for them. Let them know what your reasons are for being concerned. Let them know some of the things that we've already talked about. Hey, I've noticed this. I've noticed some changes in your behaviors. I've noticed. I also know that these other things have happened in your life, and I'm worried about you. So be really transparent about why you're worried about them. And then once you've taken the time to do those things to create kind of a safe place for them to talk, then it's time for you to um, to let them share what it is that they're comfortable sharing with you. And hopefully by then, because you've created that safe place for them to share what is going on with them, they'll be able to do that. And then that is your time to really be present um, and be and show them that you are a safe place for them to express what's going on with them. Another thing that is really important is for you to actually ask the question and be really, be direct. Are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? It can be a really, because it is such a big, loaded question, it can create a lot of anxiety for people. And so, as much as you can, try to remain calm. Your calm presence is going to make a really big difference for your friend, for your colleague, for your family. So, as much as you can, try to keep yourself calm, try to keep yourself that kind of safe place for them um, to be able to land when they're struggling so much. However, I think a lot of people get concerned that if they ask the question, if they say, hey, are you thinking of killing yourself, that it will like give them the idea or something like that. I promise you, it is not. They, if you have these concerns, they have more than likely thought of it already. And so, if anything, you asking that question is just taking some of that power away and opening the door for them to feel comfortable in talking about it in a safe place. So. Don't be afraid to ask the question. Again, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? You will not plant the seed or give them an idea that they haven't already thought of before. So again, going back to active listening, really take the time to listen and understand what they're trying to tell you. So when we talk about using curious and open-ended questions are things that won't end up in a yes or no answer. So if I say, are you doing good today? The, the answer could be yes, 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 I'm doing good today. That's different than tell me how you are today. That's going to lead to more along the lines of, hey, I'm not having a great day today. I had a really rough call last night. I've been thinking about it a lot. I had to see some really tough things. So you can see how the one question, are you doing good today, leads to, yeah, I'm doing fine. Whereas the other question, tell me how you are today, leads to that person giving you a lot more information, and it opens up the door to them responding beyond just yes or no. Also, listen more, talk less. Many people will listen to someone talk and be sort of like generating their thoughts as the other person is talking. If that is something that you do sometimes, I would encourage you to try to be more present with people as they are sharing their stories, and really take in what they're saying. We also, I think, when people are struggling, it is human nature to try to jump in and provide comfort and support, and um, we want to tell them everything's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Here's how to fix your problem. Here's what you should do. Um, and your role when people are struggling is to be a presence for them, and to let them know that you're there for them and that you're hearing what they have to say. So it can be difficult, again, especially when people are struggling and you want to be a good friend and you want to offer, um, you kind of want to fix their situation, but your job at that point is to really listen and take in what it is that they have to say to you. Also validating what they're saying, and that doesn't mean validate that yes, they feel like they want to harm themselves. Um, we don't want to validate that action, but validating the emotions that are going on. Yeah, that's really when we go out on calls and we see those hard things, it is really hard. It's hard um, to move past them sometimes. Sometimes it is hard to sleep. Sometimes we do think about it all the time. Um, yeah, I can imagine that if my significant other suddenly ended our relationship, that would be incredibly difficult. So just letting them know that what they're feeling is valid, and that's something that you can do. You can validate the emotions behind the suicidal thoughts. And that doesn't mean that you're saying like, yeah, maybe you should follow through with your thoughts of hurting yourself. You're simply validating the emotions. Um, and that doesn't mean that you're also saying that they should follow through with the action. So don't be afraid to let them know that you hear what they're saying, and that you understand that what they're going through is really challenging. Another really important step to take is to ask them about what their reasons would be for not following through. So as you're actively listening to them, you might hear them say something like, yeah, I've it's been on my mind. I've been thinking a lot. There is that poison that we have at the firehouse, and it's been on my mind that maybe I would do something. But I've got like my son at home, and I keep thinking about that, and so I don't get to that point, and then maybe they'll move on to, but but X, Y, and Z, these are some of the reasons why I keep going back to maybe I should just do it and end my life. So you might hear them you might hear little things that come up that have stopped them from actually following through on um, taking their own lives. If you hear those things, those are important to pick up on and um, try to magnify. So ask them more about that. Tell me more about your son. Tell me more about what happens when you decide like, oh, thought about my son and decided not to follow through on them. Try to get them talking about those pieces that they have to live for a little bit more. You might have people who struggle to come up with reasons for living. And the reasons might be really small, especially to you. They might be really small, but it's important to try to take time to dig with them and come up with any reason to not actually take the action and follow through with hurting themselves. You can see kind of the picture I chose here was of somebody like planting something. Your goal here is to like plant the seed that life is worth it. Life is worth sticking around for. And that is kind of your goal. And in helping them dig out some reasons for not following through and hurting themselves. And then again, be non-judgmental. Some of the things that they might bring up for not actually following through with it might seem sort of trivial or small, and that's okay. We don't care at that point, as long as there's something that that they're bringing up. And then also, if they're really struggling to come up with any reason, that's also a time to make sure that you are staying non-judgmental. It can be difficult sometimes to hear people dismiss things that seem important to you. So for example, you might say like, well, what about your kids? What about your spouse? What about, what about me, your fire brother, your fire sister? It's important to stay non-judgmental. The person you're talking to is really strong, and their brain is not working in the same way as us. So keep working on staying in that active listening spot, and just listening to what your friend or family member is having to say to you. The next step from there, once you've hopefully been able to kind of get a little bit of a extract from them some reasons for living and for not following through with hurting themselves, is just to kind of get them to make a commitment not to hurt themselves. And if you can get them to like figure out a time frame. So, hey, will you promise me that you're not going to hurt yourself between now and our next shift together, or between now and tomorrow, because I'm going to come over and see you tomorrow as well. So get them to commit to a certain time frame to not hurt themselves. And you can even say, hey, you don't have to make any promises after that, but just promise not to hurt yourself for that time period. That's really important. And make sure that they understand, they're kind of like, they understand the importance of that commitment. At that point, you have likely developed some good rapport with them. They probably have a lot of trust in you if they've disclosed this much, and if you've created kind of this safe spot to have these conversations. So ask them to make that commitment. Don't have it be too long of a period of time if you can. So not longer than 1 or 2 days if possible. Otherwise, it can seem kind of like too much to commit to for some people. If you have resources, so I would encourage you, if you don't have resources, again, at your firehouse, at home, with your friends, with your family, work on developing a list of resources that you can access. A call line. Maybe there is a mental health center around you that you would be able to connect people to, but have a list of resources easily accessible that you can provide to them. And then let them know what the follow-up plan is. I'm going to check in with you at the beginning of our next shift. I'm going to come over tomorrow and check in with you. Another thing that can be important is asking them if there are other people you can bring into this. So hey, can I also talk to, can I tell Tim at the, who is maybe somebody else at the firehouse who you're all close to? Can we also tell Tim about this? Try to expand the circle a little bit, but let them know, like, what is the follow-up plan? I'm going to ask you to keep yourself safe for 24 hours. Then we're going to check in. I'm going to see if you've called the phone number that we talked about. I'm going to see if you've, gotten rid of that poison at your home, or I'm going to see if you've talked to your wife about getting rid of that poison, or whatever the case may be, so that they know what the next step is after following that kind of commitment of time to stay safe. So kind of in wrapping up here, you all have a responsibility. Every single one of us can help prevent suicide. One of the most important things to be mindful of is the importance of community. So families, religious leaders, the people around us is those groups of people can be so important and help work to destigmatize um, the the problems of suicide and help to kind of create that social movement that helps it move from a criminal matter to a public health issue and create more compassion for people who struggle with suicidal thoughts, and help really create a movement to respond to people differently. And so your actions, the way that you talk about it, the way that you encourage people to respond to it can really make a difference. You can set the stage for other people around you to start responding to it differently, and that kind of that chain effect can have a huge impact. Again, I always encourage people to actually use the word suicide. Don't be afraid to use it. Again, you're not going to put any ideas in anyone's mind that isn't already there if they've been thinking about it. Make sure you have conversations with people if you're concerned about them. Talk with other people around you about what you learned about today. Take some of that power, some of that stigma out of the word suicide and make it sort of a normal thing that people talk about, just like people talk about some of the other public health issues um, that don't carry the same kind of stigma or weight. Some of the other language pieces that are important doesn't seem like a big deal all the time, but saying things like, instead of they committed suicide, saying things like they died by suicide. Criminals commit crimes. Suicide is not a crime, it's a mental health issue. So even little switches like that can make a difference, because again, we don't say they committed you know, a stroke, they committed a heart attack, they died by a stroke, they died by heart attack. So if you think about it, this is, I believe, the only kind of manner of death that where they say they committed. So that's another way to reframe how we talk about it. And then again, just reach out, make sure you're reaching out to people, make sure that you are kind of that light that people can go to, that safe place where people can have those conversations. And also for yourself, it's okay to not be okay. Most people entertain thoughts of self-harm at some point in their life. It's okay to have those thoughts. It's okay to have those times, and it's okay to reach out. And that's where you all are really going to, that's where your responsibility comes in, is to be that safe place when other people reach out to you. And that is all I had. We kind of wrapped up early today, but thank you to everyone. Sante Sana. Lost a little bit of the Swahili that I learned when I was there, but I do remember that. Um, yeah, I don't know, Mike, is there if there's any questions or um, any follow-up that is needed after this?
We can definitely take some questions. Let me tweak the settings a little bit here. If you've got any questions, you can use the raise hand feature. You can unmute yourself, ask your question. You can drop a question in the chat. The floor is open if anybody has any questions or comments.
Or even stories, if you have any examples that you can share of a time when someone was struggling and maybe you reached out to them, or maybe the opposite, maybe a time when you were struggling and something that was helpful to you when you were going through that time. That would also be great to hear from someone.
Question.
Yeah.
Mister.
Go ahead, Errol.
Okay. Are there any times where someone can be given an idea of committing suicide? And what are the signs and symptoms of showing that someone is being told to commit suicide?
That someone is being told.
Yes,
So almost like
like
bullying the person or.
yes, like putting an idea in their head.
Mhm. Yeah, and that would imagine that that happens, and would be very concerning. Um, I would, so what you would probably see are really similar behaviors. You're probably going to see a change in that person's um, some of the things that that person does. So if you go back to like the warning slide, the warning signs slide, and pay attention to some of the things that you know about the person. So maybe they're usually like really social and friendly, and all of a sudden you start to see that they're really quiet. Maybe you start to see that they um, are showing up in the same clothes every single day, and they used to like take a lot of pride in wearing, really, really fancy clothes or something like that. So you would be wanting to pay attention um, to changes in their behavior. And then that's where you would want to come in and be like that safe place for them, right? Because you might not be able to do anything about that person that's bullying them, right? Is whether or not I don't know who that person is, but they're probably not a great person. So you're probably not going to want to go in and like talk to that guy, or gal,
Yeah.
but but that's where you're going to be that place to go in and say like, hey, I'm noticing some changes going on. Maybe I would be curious about what makes you think, Errol, that somebody is saying things or putting ideas in their head. So, whatever it is that you saw or heard that maybe was giving you that idea, if you've created a place where that person can feel comfortable talking to you, you could maybe ask them about that and be that place where they can tell you more about that, and then you can help them problem solve. Um, Maybe there's ways to
Last
get out of
question.
that situation. Maybe you can help them um, to kind of make them understand, help build up their confidence and their feelings of self-worth so that they, if they can't leave the situation, they
Yeah.
don't feel like they have to follow through. Is that helpful? Yeah.
Yes, it is helpful.
Yeah.
Last question
Yeah.
from my side.
What was that?
I'm just saying, last question from my side is
Oh, sure.
how does dark humor in the first responders or in the fire service has an influence in suicide? For example, when someone tells you, you go lie down and die, how does it have influence on us?
That is a great question, Errol. Because there is a very unique humor in the fire service, right? So, um, I do I do say that some of the things that were said in the firehouse, if I would repeat them to people who were not fire services or in the fire service, they would be really shocked at some of the things that we would say. And I think that can be a really challenging thing to get to the bottom of. And that's where, again, it's important to look for changes in someone's uh, behaviors and someone's personality. So many of us say things that are not super appropriate, and that's okay. I'm totally guilty of that as well. But are you seeing that it is happening more often? Are you seeing that like there seems to, maybe it seemed like it was more joking before, and now like the tone has changed, and now they almost seem like they're more serious where before they were joking. So again, that's where your ability to kind of like, even in the joking, even in the funny, somewhat inappropriate conversations that you can have, where you can jump in and say like, "Hey, I know we were joking, and that's cool, but that seemed a little weird." That's where having those relationships can make a difference. Because
Okay.
if you've created that safe place, then you can jump in, and they might be like, "Oh my gosh, Erla, I was totally kidding. It's fine." But
Okay.
if you open that conversation too, then they might know like, okay, well, Errol's a place that I can go to, right? Maybe they weren't kidding, but maybe they weren't ready to talk about it then. But now they know that Errol's
Okay.
somebody they can talk to. And so they
Uh-huh.
might come back to you in a couple days and be like, well, yeah, Errol, guess what? I wasn't kidding. Like, I have been thinking about this more often. So great
Okay.
question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other
Anything else?
questions or comments, you guys can drop them in the chat. You can raise your hand, wave at us, unmute, and ask your question. We'll keep the floor open for just a few more minutes here in our formal section of the training, but don't go away. We're going to transition to tea time here soon.
As a firefighter, are you allowed to connect your client to a servant of God for spiritual counseling, prayers, or connect and refer them to psychiatric clinic? Um, so I will just say that from my perspective, you should connect them to whoever is going to help them, right? So if they are somebody who is really connected um, to their church, then that would be a wonderful place for you to connect them to. And I don't think that there's any reason that you would not be able to. But also, it would be important to have the right resources to respond to their need. So if you think that they're really close to hurting themselves, then you would want to make sure that whoever you're connecting them to is going to be able to step in and support them. So if a church is going to be able to step in and keep them safe, that's great. But sometimes people need more intense support. And that's where, again, I encourage everybody to go and at their fire service, make sure they try to have things posted, whether it's hotlines that people can call or places that people can go, whether it's church, whether it's psychiatric services, places people can go to connect if they're struggling, so that you can get people connected to whatever they need. If it's less significant, there might be more options, but if they are really close to hurting themselves, you might need to get them connected to more intensive services.
Yeah, just to add on to that, whenever we try to help folks out, right, you want to meet all of their needs. So physical needs, mental needs, spiritual needs as well. Spirituality is always a big part of sort of the
Mhm.
complete person, and whatever that may look like for you and your beliefs. That's why there's chaplains. Why fire brigades have chaplains. We use chaplains for counseling for our firefighters. We use chaplains to assist victims of whatever it is, fires, accidents, that sort of stuff. So certainly that spiritual component is that's all right. That's there. Here in the U.S., we're trying to really normalize this taking care of mental health. So it's required for employers here to have those types of services available. We'll be doing more training on this throughout this month. We'll be talking about critical incident stress management and things like that. So I invite you all to stick around for what's coming up here and through the rest of the month. But all these things we recognize, and it's almost mandatory, right? If we have a bad incident or we see someone struggling, as leaders in the fire service here, as a fire chief, it's my responsibility, if I see that, to get these people some help that they need. We have free counseling programs available and things like that. So certainly, if it's not built into your system in your fire brigade, but you have those resources, you know where you can refer those people to, by all means, you want to start to get that going. As the fire service develops to where it's coming up on par with all of, to these international standards, those are programs that you guys are going to have and that'll be routine in your fire brigade. So you can start building on that, working towards that now. And also that advocacy piece of advocating to your leaders that we should get that, advocating to your city or county governments that you need to have those kinds of services available is really important. At this point in time, we're gonna wrap up the formal portion of our training. A big thank you to Krista for coming and sharing. She's got years of experience doing this kind of work, and this is a difficult topic to discuss. So thank you so much for coming and leading us through this topic. It's really important. Thank you to all of you out there for taking your time and your bundles to join us for today's training. Hold on just a second, Patrick. We'll get to you in just a minute here. Thank you all for coming. We've got plenty of seats available here, so please share this through social media. Check out our social media, do the whole subscribing and stuff like that. This recording will premiere at 8 o'clock Friday morning on your time, East Africa time there. So if you can, please share this with other people that missed this training. It's really important. We have to, watch out for each other and help each other out. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. We've got plenty of seats here. If you know somebody that benefits from this training, please share that registration link or those registration emails that we get, forward them along, get people signed up. We've got plenty of seats here for everybody else, more people to join us. So thank you to everyone, and we're going to see you all again next week.